Welcome to Genuine Gainz. I'm Meredith Mistro, and I'm here to help you find mental and physical wellness that feels true to you. Life can be overwhelming, and taking care of yourself shouldn't add to that stress. So whether you're seeking inspiration, practical tips, or just a little encouragement, you're in the right spot. We'll share real stories and resources to help you find your own path to wellness, one that fits your life and your goals. Let's make those genuine gains your way. Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Before I get started with today's episode, just want to put out a little trigger warning. I know, this means it's serious, but don't worry. It's just about mental health. Nothing too crazy, right? Anyway, if you can't tell, I'm so brain dead right now, but I am, of course, going to be getting into a very deep, very vulnerable topic. No better time, am I right? So, if you feel triggered or just simply don't want to hear about mental health struggles today, then please leave. It's okay. I don't judge you. I'm here for you no matter what. And why am I becoming a therapist right now? Basically, trigger warning if you don't want to hear about mental health. Thank you. Moving on into the episode. Welcome back, everyone. This is my final episode of my Self-Care Toolbox series, which is crazy to say. It's only been 5 episodes, but it has felt like a journey, and I appreciate all of you for being here with me on it. If you have not listened to my other episodes in the series, of course I'm going to recommend you do that, but I also think you don't necessarily need to still find value in this episode. This is why I saved this one for the end, because I feel like it's a good way to end the series off with a bang and affect everyone, hopefully positively, whether you've listened to the rest of the series or not. This episode is not going to be super tactical, not going to be getting into the nitty gritty. Why do I use that term? I don't like it. Can someone actually tell me what that means? Because it just sounds icky. Anyway, I'm not going to be getting into the details of what self-care is and how to implement it because I've really already done all of that work. What I'm going to be doing in this episode is sharing, and this may be a bit of a repeat from episode 1, but going a little bit more in depth about why I think the biggest part to self-care is truly just validating yourself for wherever you're at mentally right now. I think a lot of people practice self-care to help with their mental health. Obviously, I've spent all of my episodes talking about that and how important it is to functioning well physically and mentally. But to be honest, a lot of the roadblocks that I discussed in the first episode around feeling a lack of energy or a lack of motivation toward incorporating self-care really all stem from mental health and struggles that many of us face that create exhaustion and create this lack of motivation and keep us feeling stuck. So today I'm going to hopefully kind of flip the script on what you've heard about your mental health and how you've learned to define yourself by your mental health. And I'm going to validate you for wherever you're at in your journey right now. I'm going to share why I think it's so hard to validate ourselves using the concept of mental health stigmas. And I'm also going to share a bit more about my personal mental health journey, some things that I don't think I've shared on here before. So that's why I also put a trigger warning, because this is not stuff I like to talk about, but I also know that I am not the only one going through this. And if I could help one person feel a little less alone, I would, die happy. Anyway, let's get into the mental health stigma piece first. I think when it comes to validating our mental health, the stigma around mental health issues is the biggest thing that gets in the way. Now, I can say this easily, but I also want to define it for all of you because I personally can't really put into words how it feels to live with a mental health struggle and, how I've kind of defined myself by it. So instead, I went to Google, as I do, found a really great definition of stigma from Mayo Clinic, shout out, And I'm going to read it for all of you and then kind of apply it to my own experiences, and hopefully it'll get you thinking about whether or not you've experienced this in your own mental health journey. So, a stigma in general is when someone views you in a negative way because you have a distinguishing characteristic or personal trait that's thought to be or actually is a disadvantage or a negative stereotype. That was a lot of words. But basically, a stigma is all about other people's perceptions of you based on something you hold, whether it's something you have control of or not. But oftentimes it's these traits that we just have inherently. In the case of mental health, though, it can be any mental health condition, whether we've been officially diagnosed or we just feel it, anything that we feel mentally that we choose to share with other people, either directly or even indirectly, even if people just pick up on something that suggests, our mental health is not completely stable, we can experience this stigma feeling. Now, how can this actually show up though? Because there's so many different ways. It's not just always about what people say to you. Sometimes it's about actions. And so I kind of categorize the ways that stigma can show up into different buckets. The first is direct. So people can be very direct with you about whatever it is that you hold that they don't like. So making comments to you, making you feel insecure in some way. A lot of it is things that people say, but indirectly, they can also kind of show you how they feel by maybe starting to avoid you, maybe talking behind your back. And from a broader perspective, it can also be really hard to live with mental health stuff and navigate it when it affects you at work. It affects you in social situations. It might affect the opportunities that you're granted in all of these situations because whoever is in charge of placing those opportunities into your life has something against you or something against the mental health condition that you hold that you might be expressing directly or indirectly to them. So there's a lot of different ways that the stigma can show up. And I certainly, for one, have felt every single one of these things at various points throughout my life so far. So let me get into a little bit more of what I mean by that. I'm going to dive into a little bit of my mental health story, if you will, and struggles I've had and continue to have today, and kind of how I've felt these stigmas and how they've affected my ability to take care of myself. And then, of course, we're going to get more positive and talk through kind of, again, things I've done to really push past the stigma and actually validate myself, because that, at the end of the day, regardless of all the self-care practices I've incorporated into my life, it's the validation of myself for being how I am and who I am that has made the biggest difference in my life as a whole. So I want all of us to get there too. All right. Sound good? I'm pausing to give everyone a chance to breathe because that was a lot to put into 8 minutes, but we got the definition down. So let's get into a tactical example, aka my life. Love that. So if you listen to this podcast for any length of time, you know I've struggled with anxiety mostly for years and years. I would say it started, I don't know. I think middle school is when I first vividly remember it happening. But then again, I don't know if I had the brain capacity to really understand what anxiety was before that age. So who knows? All that to say, I think a huge reason why I felt anxiety growing up was because I just always felt like I didn't fit in anywhere I went for literally traits that made me who I am. And I mean that both in physical terms and more personality traits, like literally everything. And I know this is a very common experience, regardless of what you look like, regardless of where you come from. It's so common to just feel like you don't fit in and like everyone else is different from you and everyone else is judging you. But unfortunately, for me, those thoughts were honestly accompanied by a lot of actions from people that, in my mind, confirmed that yes, I was different from everyone, and no, that was not in a positive way. I have never really been someone big on appearances or how many friends I have or what I look like every day. Like, of course, I want to look nice. I want to have quality people in my life, but I do that for myself, not for social media, not for other people's validation. At least I'd like to think so. And obviously, I didn't have social media and all those things back in middle school, but even at that time, I was someone who was very much like, okay, I want to do well in school, get good grades, do all these things for myself. I want to make good friends. And I think naturally I gravitated toward conversations that were like actually getting to know someone, rather than just talking about whatever surface level topics existed, or looking a certain way. And I was very quickly judged for that. A lot of people questioned me for, you know, not being like them, not dressing like them, being too focused on school and not focused enough on other things. And I mean, people would make comments to my face like that, and it was hurtful. And honestly, like, this is something that has happened ever since. Like, I've never gotten away from it. Anytime I share something about myself, whether it's like a hobby I have or, you know, just like how I think about life, how I think about work, how I think about my career, um, and how I think about relationships. That's a huge one. Everyone is so judgmental about that. And that could be its own series, to be honest with you. But it's like any element of my life that I share vulnerably with people, I have felt very judged for. Like, people literally will say to my face, like, why why do you think like that? Why do you feel that way? And not like in a way to understand, but you can catch someone's drift when they're talking to you, and it's like the tone of voice, the way they look at you, whatever it may be. That can be one way of telling, like, okay, they're judging me, but they can also flat out say some really nasty things to you and just make you feel terrible about who you are as a person. So I've experienced a lot of that, just like people being people. And I'm not here to call anyone out or to make anyone feel bad. I think, we've all done it, and we've all also been the receiver of it. Like, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, obviously it's their problem and not mine. But it unfortunately became my problem because it affected me a lot. I think when I was younger, just thought, oh, I can just be myself and say things that I think and look how I want to look, and that won't be a problem. And when it proved to be a problem, that is when my struggle with actually being authentic and being vulnerable really began. That's when the anxiety really began, because I started to feel so stressed out about every social interaction I was going to have, you know, stressed out about who I was and what I was doing and if I was doing the right or wrong thing. Like, I started overthinking absolutely everything. And it's sad because it was literal in my brain proof from how people had treated me that, like, I was not like them. And in some way that meant I wasn't enough. So in middle school, again, going back to where it started, like, I had maybe one friend. I sat alone all the time. I like literally cried all the time, which I'm not laughing at myself, but I'm kind of laughing because it's low key kind of hard for me to cry now, and that's probably trauma, but at the time I was like, let's just cry during class. Why not? Um I was not thinking like that, but sometimes it happened, and it is what it is. But that trend of, feeling and being alone continued throughout high school and continued throughout college. I'd say I've always just been a very independent person, which is great, and I'm very proud of that now. But I still have my moments where I'm like, you know, does anyone actually care or like me? I don't know. I feel like I'm saying all of this, and this is exactly going back to my point about mental health stigmas. Like, I feel like what I'm saying is just me being self-centered and me being like, everyone should care about me. I'm so great. And that's literally the opposite of how I feel about myself. But when I say all this out loud, I worry that people are going to judge. And that is literally what I'm trying to prevent. But here I am still worrying, even as I speak it out loud into the universe. So it it's still affecting me, obviously. And it just has always made me wonder, even with people who I would consider friends now, with my family, with like people I'm super close to, I still have moments where I'm like, okay, do they actually like me though? Or are they talking behind my back? Are they like secretly judging me? Are they just hanging out with me out of convenience? Like, I worry about that all the time. Even with people, like I said, who I am super close to or who I think I'm close to, I still stress and feel like there's something about me that's embarrassing, that's not enough, and just like not right. And that is more anxiety for you. So that's a lot. I think honestly, it's continued and in some ways gotten worse since I entered the workforce a couple years ago. I really started to struggle with anxiety in a new way, which I think happens to a lot of people post grad. You are so used to being in this structured way of living, going through years and years of school for however many years you're in school, and that's like literally the way you live your whole life and the way you learn. So when you don't have that structure and that institution behind you and you're kind of on your own in a sense, the anxiety can get really real, and the worries and fears of, am I living my life the right way? And do other people like me, or are other people judging me? Like, those just get exaggerated sometimes when you don't have something like school behind you to kind of cushion you and help you remember that, like, well, yeah, you're on the right path because you're doing what everyone else is doing. Once you're out of school, it's like everyone's doing their own thing. And especially at my age, it is so crazy to me how different I am than so many people. Like, again, no judgment, but I know people who have had kids at my age. I know people who have gotten married. I know people who are in jail. Um, and I also know people who are single and independent and whatever. Not saying that you can't be independent if you're married or in jail, but okay, I'm gonna stop talking. Actually, no, I'm not. This is a podcast. What am I saying? Anyway, I feel like every episode, just these out of pocket comments come at the most random times. So you never know when you're gonna get them. That's keeps you on your toes, right? So anyway, everyone's at a different phase of life. That's what I'm trying to say. And so there's not really a common thing keeping you all tied together, not a common thing to kind of keep you feeling at least a little comforted, knowing like, okay, well, at least everyone else is also in school with me. So even if I'm the biggest weirdo and don't have my life together, at least I'm in school. We don't have that anymore. So for me, the anxiety got even worse. Um, I think honestly, the judgments have continued too in more specific ways as I've grown up and gotten out of school. I've been lucky to establish a great life for myself, and I do want to take some time to acknowledge that because I think I can have gratitude, which I do, but also still share some struggles, which I also have. But I'm very grateful because my hard work, my independence, whatever you want to call it, like it paid off in the sense that, you know, I have a nice life, I have a nice place to live, I have a nice job, I have nice people in my life, and I'm healthy, all of these great things, right? I have a very good life. Um, so I think as I've kind of grown up and established more of my own independent life, people's judgments and comments or indirect things like avoidance have almost gotten stronger because there's almost more evidence for them to use to fuel their fire. So, for example, whenever I do share like vulnerably how I'm doing, with someone, let's say at work, let's say I'm like at work not having the best mental health day, and I'm trying to be real, so I'm like, I'm okay, I'm a little stressed. And that's the thing, like I never get into the details too much because I'm like, I don't want to assume people want to know like my life history here. That's what I reserve for the podcast, not my work meetings. But even if I just say like stressed sometimes or whatever, I a lot of people, I'll say a lot of people are very supportive and like me too, it's fine. Some people though are not, and they'll say things like, you know, you're overreacting, like you are totally fine, you have it all under control. They'll say sometimes I should just be grateful because I have so much going for me. I have nothing to worry about. Um, and sometimes, like, I don't think they mean harm, but they're just like, oh, yeah, sorry to hear that. And just whatever, move on. Work is work. I get it. But I think some people kind of underestimate or don't even really think about how stress, for example, could have an impact on my life, on conversations. And there's not really an attempt to understand it any more than just saying, like, some word of acknowledgement. And let me be clear, I'm not expecting in a work setting or any setting for people to like really take the time to be like, oh my God, tell me everything. Like, let me be your therapist. Like, no, that would honestly be kind of weird too. But I think sometimes it's hard when we're all told to be ourselves, right? We're all told to be vulnerable, to, you know, feel like you can say whatever's on your mind. Psychological safety is a huge concept going around these days. Whatever you want to call it, like we're all told that that's okay. But then when we actually are vulnerable and share how we're feeling, I feel like a lot of people still don't really meet us in the best spot. And that kind of perpetuates the idea of the stigma because people are literally making us feel bad, even if they don't intend to. They're still making us feel bad by saying something or doing something that makes us feel like we are wrong for feeling the way that we do. So it's been interesting to kind of reflect on that, seeing how some of the judgments and stigmas have almost gotten worse since I graduated and since I started working. And that has really tested my level of self confidence as well. I've done a lot to work on my anxiety throughout the years, but honestly have had to do more than anything since graduating because of how much everything has kind of not blown up. It's not like crazy every second of the day I'm getting like punched by people, but it is like more significant now that I have, I guess, my own life. So all these things have happened, and I think what I've also found to really happen through all the stigmas, through the judgments, is that I show up differently because I let the stigma get to me. This is where I'm trying to make a change right now. Kind of getting to that last point I made about having to manage and work on my anxiety more now than ever. Um, I've had to do that because feeling more judgment has naturally made me more closed off and, a little bit fake sometimes, which I hate to say because this is all about being genuine, but it's true. Like when you feel like you are not okay for having anxiety or depression or literally any mental health thing, literally feeling anything, any type of way. It can be diagnosed, it can be undiagnosed, it can be to other people, it can mean something big or small. It doesn't matter what it means to them. If it feels big to you, like that should be valid. But when you feel like it's not valid, it naturally, I think, as humans, makes us close ourselves off. It has also affected me in how I show up in terms of making me just start to pretend like everything's fine. And I think a lot of people do that. It's almost easier sometimes to just be like, whatever, like, I'm fine. How are you? Like, move on because no one really cares. And I don't want to risk being judged and being hurt. So I found myself sometimes pretending like it's okay. I think, sometimes we all have to do that. Like, I'm not saying every single time someone asks, how are you? You should get into your, again, life story. No, but I mean, you can, I don't care. But I think sometimes I feel like I have to put on this front, and pretend, because it just makes life easier. The inability to open up, I already talked about that. I close myself off after bad experiences of feeling not enough, because who wants to continue to feel judged? Like, I just try to think of what would not get me judged and be that instead. And whether that's what I do or who I am or like what I say, I am trying so hard to get better at this, but I still feel like sometimes, like, my way of protecting myself from judgment is just not opening up at all, not saying anything, just pretending it's fine. Another thing that it's affected me in is like asking people for help, or admitting when, I might not be able to do everything myself and I might need support in some way. And this can literally apply to any situation ever. I've always kind of been like this. Again, back to the independence. I'm like, I don't need anyone. It's fine. I can do it all myself. And oftentimes it's easier to do it myself. Like, maybe a toxic trait, because it doesn't really give a lot of people a chance. But sometimes I'm like, group projects. No. If no one, okay, well, that's a different conversation. A lot of people just don't put in their part in a group project, but sometimes I'm even just like, you know what? I just really would prefer to have control over this and do this my way. I feel like it'll be better, it'll be easier, and it's easier than trying to get people to do things a certain way. I just need to do it myself. I know that's crazy to say, and I know that makes me sound terrible, but it's who I am sometimes. I'm trying to be better again. Anyway, inability to ask for help is another one. I think when I feel judged for not being able to have it all figured out, it makes me feel like, okay, I have to have it all figured out. Let me just figure it all out myself. And that's what I do. And I can do it. But then, I think about it and I'm like, should I have really done that? Because I might have actually made my life harder by taking everything on myself and not, giving anyone else the chance to help if they wanted to help me. So yeah, that's another example of how it shows up in my life. But again, there are so many more things I could say about it. What I really just want to say at the end of the day is, if you have also struggled with anxiety or any other struggle with your mental health, and you have also felt like there's this stigma behind it and that you're not a good person because of it, or that you won't have the same opportunities as other people because of it, or you won't have friends or a good job or whatever it may be that you're insecure about with this thing, just know that you're not alone. I feel it every single day of my life. And I don't wish that people were in my brain, because it's not fun a lot of the time with how I talk to myself and how I'm treating myself, and how stressed I am. But, it is something that I think is real. We all are going through things, and that's what I try to keep in mind. I know I'm talking all about myself, so it seems like I have zero care for other people, but when I do have conversations with people, when I am interacting, I really try to come from a place of empathy and understanding for people's situations. Like, if someone wrongs me, no, I'm not going to stand for that, and you will always be, you know, kept a distance away from me. But, I also understand people are people, humans are humans. We all have our things going on. And I try to lead with understanding and not judge someone based on something they're going through, whether it's mental health or situational or anything else, because if anyone should understand, it's me. And I try to do that. So I don't know why I just put that little rant in there, I guess because as I sit here, I'm worried about how people think of me. I hope this is relatable in some way. Literally like having a therapy session with myself right now, except I'm not giving myself answers. I'm just giving myself more questions. But what I want to kind of pivot to now for the last little bit of this episode is how I have really tried to start taking care of myself in the sense of validating myself. Because it's easy for me to sit here and say, just validate yourself. Like, you're fine. It's okay. Remember, it's normal. Also, there's so much honking outside right now. So, great background noise, really fits the vibe of the podcast, honestly. Fits the vibe of what's going on in my brain as I speak. But as easy as it is for me to sit here and say, just, validate yourself, it's much easier said than done. So, let me give you a few things I've done that honestly help me validate myself and in themselves are actions of self-care. So if you're still sitting here like, I don't know what self-care practice to choose, these can be your self-care practices too. So the first thing I did, and I've mentioned making more episodes on this. I can't do it all right now. Okay, Meredith, move on, go faster. The first thing that I did pretty much right out of college that I think really, really helped me start validating my feelings and mental health things I was going through was really taking care of whatever physically could be going wrong. Because a lot of times, physical health and mental health are linked in some way. I'm not saying in every case, and I'm also not a doctor. I probably should have led with that. In case you guys weren't aware, I am not a doctor of any kind. But, I can say that I have found mental and physical health to be extremely linked, at least in my case, with a lot of things I've gone through. And one of the most empowering things that I've done for myself in my mental health journey has been ruling out physical conditions and continuing to search for any physical stuff that could be going on. So I've gone through so much of that. I've gotten hormones tested a bajillion times. I have gotten everything that comes with female hormones. It's crazy. I've done the blood work, I've done the ultrasounds, I've done all the things. I've also gotten a lot of thyroid stuff checked, had various exams for that, various blood tests for that, checking all of those levels. I have had a brain scan now. That was a crazy experience. Not really, but it was cool. I was so glad I did that actually at the end of the day because there are other things I've had going on, but I'm like, you know what? Let me just make sure my brain is actually okay. Um, plot. Why was I going to say plot twist? It is not a plot twist, but my brain is okay. I hope that's not a plot twist. Ugh, if you think it's a plot twist that my brain is healthy, then please leave and never come back to this podcast. Anyway, yeah, so I had a brain scan. My voice is like quivering, like I'm scared to talk about it. I have literally gone to pretty much not all the doctors, but I've done so many different kinds of doctors at this point. Even naturopaths, I've been there. Literally just started trying out this chiropractor PT place a few weeks ago. Like, which I know you're probably like, how is this all related to validating your mental health? But just taking time to understand your physical health, I think is so helpful in empowering yourself. Because even if you're like, I feel super healthy, that's great. Like physically, if you feel super healthy, that's awesome. But I think it can always be good peace of mind just to make sure. Because sometimes there's something going on. And for me, it has been a process. That's why I need to make it its own series. But there could be many things wrong with me, or there could be nothing wrong with me. We still don't know, but just doing the work to get to those answers has been really, really helpful in just making me feel more validated because there have been several things that have come out of these appointments and exams and blood results that have validated some of the symptoms I've felt and some of the feelings that I've had in my brain. And that is really helpful because, numbers, physical health, all that stuff doesn't lie. So if there's something in there that could validate you, I say go for it, use it, because it's hard to just convince yourself that you're normal. So, use whatever you can get. But I think the other thing that has really helped me in validating my mental health struggles is therapy and seeking help when I need it. I never talk about that on here for some reason. I don't know why. Um, I don't even know. But it is something that I've been doing for, honestly, I think over a year and a half now. We might be coming up on 2 years in 2025, which is crazy. But yeah, I started doing that. My company offers a really nice benefit for therapy and mental health type of stuff. So I use that. But regardless, like, I think it's so worth it to make an investment in your mental health like that, because even, what I try to remember is, even if my therapist is judging me secretly, she is paid to not judge me. So, I can still stress out about what she really thinks about me, but at least I know that whenever I go there and talk to her, she's probably at the end of the day gonna be validating me and making me feel better. Because if she didn't make me feel better, then I wouldn't come back, and she might not be in business. So, not that I'm keeping her in business, trust me. I'm not going that much. I feel like everything I say, I'm like, this might be a little concerning. But no, I just think therapy in general is great. And I know every single person in the world talks about it now, but I literally think no one is too good for it. Everyone could use it. And you know what I heard the other day is that you should really consider seeking it when you're actually feeling in a good mental state, because when inevitably you do go through a period of turmoil, you will have tools to help yourself get through that. Whereas if you never go to therapy, never even do that self reflection and find the tools that work for you, then if you go through a hard time, it's going to feel that much harder because you haven't really set a solid foundation on how to, get through tough times like that. Not that it should be easy by any means, but I think having a solid foundation and working with someone who is literally trained to give you that foundation can be super helpful regardless of who you are. So please, I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but if you have not done therapy, have not considered it, or maybe you have considered it, but you're scared, or you're like, again, fear of judgment, there's a stigma behind it. You know, just please take this as a sign to maybe think about it, maybe do it. You don't have to commit forever. You can do one session. A lot of therapists offer free consultations, so you can even kind of get their vibe before you pay for a whole session. You know what I mean? There's telehealth, there's in person, there's so many ways to get therapy. But I'd say number one, getting the physical health stuff checked, and number two, getting the mental health stuff checked through therapy. Those are the two things that have really helped me learn how to validate myself. Yes, it is other people validating me in these cases, but I am being given the tools and knowledge to learn how to validate myself. And that, to me, is self-care. So, going to therapy is self-care, getting blood work is self-care. Whatever you want to count as self-care can be self-care. And you know what? I think that's a really great way to end this series. Regardless of the stigma that exists around mental health and around an inability to take care of ourselves, I just want you to know that you're not alone in it. I'm right here with you, and we're all going through it together. So if you need to talk to someone, yes, I would recommend a therapist, but I'm also here if you need someone who's not a therapist. Let me know. And I promise I'm not here to judge. I'm just here. I'm just one person, and hopefully by sharing my story, you can feel like I'm someone you can relate to and not someone who's better than you or whatever. Maybe you feel like I'm worse than you, but honestly, That would be great. If you're like, wow, she really doesn't have her life together, I might actually be doing better than she is. There you go. Perfect. That's validating yourself. Should I be like encouraging that? Probably not. But whatever makes you feel good, whatever makes you feel like you're taking care of yourself, that's the goal of the Self-Care Toolbox series. So there you go. With that said, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm also leaving because I have to go to a workout class. So I'm going to do that, but I really appreciate all of your support over this episode and over the past 4 episodes of the series. I am going to be doing plenty more series as well as some solo episodes and hopefully some guest episodes soon. So stick around. I appreciate you. Thank you. And just remember, you're doing great. You got this. Validate yourself and don't forget to take care of yourself today. Okay? Just choose one thing. That's it. You got this. I'm here for you. I will talk to you soon. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Genuine Gainz. I hope you found something that resonates with you today. Remember, wellness is a journey, not a destination, and it's all about finding what works best for you. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little inspiration. Let's keep making those genuine gains together, one step at a time. Until next time, take care of yourself.